Hello everyone, good morning. Thank you for joining this our webinar. I don't know if my screen is showing, please.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, welcome everyone. I think this will be the third webinar of its kind for on sustainability, presented to you from Outlier Venture Lab. Thank you very much. I think most of our speakers are here. Mrs. Olatuji Olawumi, Dr. Trevor Ambai from Zambia, and also Mrs. Violet Sante from Malawi. Thank you very much for joining. All right. This is our presentation outline. I'll make a quick introduction to lab is all about, the speaker's profile, question and answer session, our spotlight, and what Outlier Venture Lab has for us. All right, the topic is unleashing. The topic is always funding for your social enterprise. All right. So I have a quick definition of what social enterprise is and what are the criteria for you to be a social entrepreneur in the in Nigeria or anywhere you find yourself. Okay, a social enterprise is an organization that is designed to improve some kind of ill or wrong while being profitable because it needs to be sustainable. All right, so I highlighted the word profitable and sustainable. So the sustainability part is what we want to focus on this webinar. And also, while it is being sustainable, we need to get something in return, which is the profit. Okay, for you to be a social entrepreneur, first of all, you have to be self sustainable. Then you have to be independent of the government. That means like an NGO or a sole proprietorship. All right. So also it has to be established to solve social problems like environmental problem, maybe unemployment issues within the community, or also creating a well sustainable environment for all. Also, it has to be impact focused. So you have to create impact on either um, as a person or as a society in the society at large. So it has to be impact focused. Also, your business methods, using business methods and not depending solely on external grants and funds to carry out such activities. So the activities, the type of social enterprise you have to choose, it doesn't depend, it must not always depend on grants or fund for you to carry out such activity. Okay, moving ahead. So I have these sectors in which you can find yourself, or you can bring up your own social enterprise in. Okay, this is for Nigeria economy, and also it could be anywhere around the world, Africa, anywhere you can find yourself. Okay, so as we can see, social enterprise can be in any of these sectors, be it craft and manufacturing. And this survey was carried out sometimes around 2020. And as you can see, the percentage of social enterprise funding each of the sectors are displayed on the screen. So we have for craft and manufacturing, for agriculture, for transport, environment, education, digital technology, financial support and services, culture and creativity industries. So down to housing, childcare, social care, healthcare. So it depends on wherever you find yourself and how you want to make impact in the organization or in the environment or in the country at large. So it depends on where your focus, where you want to focus on. Okay. Also, I have here um the survey of um each state within Nigeria, how social enterprise has grown over time from I think around 1980 down to early 2021, yes. So it's as we can see, Lagos has the um, highest percentage for social enterprise, like bringing up social enterprise, followed with Abuja. So the reason why the rank in Lagos and Abuja are high because they are kind of closer to they are kind of closer to investors or hubs where they will use and all the like. So um being okay. So as a result of this, the ranks are high, and it doesn't matter if the activities are being done in this well-developed area, that is Lagos, Abuja, Rivers, Kano, Kaduna, which has higher ranks. So it doesn't matter if there are the activities of being of carrying out social entrepreneurial activities maybe is being done there. They can be they can have their office there, then the activities will be done in rural areas, yes. So the reason why they have their sectors, like their offices in these cities, is because they are very close to investors, they are close to um, bring they are close to invest. Materials needed are all located in the city, but where the activities are being carried out mostly is in the rural environment. That means the social enterprise entails both rural environments and urban areas. That means it's kind of bringing out, taking everything together and having impact in the environment at large. Okay. Okay, now going to Outlier Venture Lab. What is Outlier Venture Lab? Outlier Venture Lab is a climate-focused venture building platform whereby we help SMEs and startups with high growth and high impact potential to become investment ready, sustainable and scalable in order to become commercially viable. So what this means in short is that Outlier Venture Lab help you to close the gap between your business and the investors. So it doesn't matter where you are, like I mean the stage you have, probably pre-seed stage, or you are the your business is ongoing. So it doesn't matter. So we help you to close the gap, thereby taking your business into the next level, that is making it sustainable and also scalable and also profitable as well. Outlier energize, outlier make, and outlier. All right, so business of the day. Um, we are on our topic, so we have our speakers here. I think Mrs. Violet on is here with us. So let me start with her profile. So Mrs. Violet, she's from Malawi, and here is her profile. Violet Chanza-Sante is an experienced development finance consultant, digital finance specialist, banker, and chartered accountant with over 20 years of professional experience in both the public and private sectors, particularly the financial industry. Violet has carried out a number of consultancy assignments in various setups of both private and public entities, including NGOs. She has previously worked as a country coordinator for the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Partnership in Malawi in conjunction with private finance advisory network, that is PFAN. Currently, she is the country advisor in Malawi of PFAN and Get Invest Catalyst on clean energy climate adaptation project. She she provided strategic leadership as a board director in various institutions like Sunbird Malawi Limited, Grow Malawi, Easy Loans Limited, and SADC Banking Association, Russia, and the International Organization for Standardization ISO's Financial Service Committee. She currently sits on the board of Ilovi Sugar, that is in Malawi, and also partner with Outlier Venture Lab. All right, let me call on her to give us our own presentation for today.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Honored to have Violet here, and I'm very excited to listen to your presentation. You had sent me your presentation earlier, so I'm going to be sharing my screen to share your own presentation. But it's a great privilege to have you here. I know you have a lot in store for us, and we're so excited to have you speak with us.
Thank you so much, Olaoni, and for the introductory remarks. Greetings to all our participants and fellow presenters, and I thank you for choosing to be part of this important business conference. And I believe you have at least one or two takeaways which will enable you to take your startup or business to the next level. So my presentation, I've entitled it the same as the title for the conference theme, which is Accelerating Your Startup's Success, Unleashing the Power of Sustainable Investments. Next slide, please. So this presentation, we are going to look at objectives of the presentation, introduction on sustainable investing concepts, and then we'll look at impact investing landscape in Africa, and the impact capital in Africa, which project developers can access. And then we'll look at takeaways for startups. And as an addition to that, we'll also look at some off-grid energy resources. Next slide, please. So this presentation, when I was working on it, I decided that the objectives of the presentation should be able to inspire entrepreneurs in harnessing impact capital. And also, I believe the startups are going to see the business opportunity for impact projects. And lastly, we're also going to outline a business identification process. Now, on the sustainable investment concepts, I want us to look at a few areas which make up what sustainable investing is all about. So we'll start with the definition. What is sustainable investing? Sustainable investing refers to specific investment approaches that aim to generate long-term returns while advancing sustainable solutions and outcomes. So there are actually three terms. For the sake of this presentation, I would like us to look at three terms which are very common in sustainable investments. The first one is a socially responsible investing. For short, it's written SRI. And then we have environmental, social, and governance. For short, it's also called ESG. And then impact investing. So these three terms are often used interchangeably but have important differences. So we'll start with the first approach, which is socially responsible investing. So next slide, please. Okay, the socially responsible investing involves the screening of investments for negative impacts based on a set of policies, adherence to certain ethical codes of practice. For instance, do not harm. This is a buzzword which is being used in sustainable investments. The other issue which SRI does is to disqualify investments in ventures that have harmful social or environmental impact, despite being profitable. For instance, if an organization is involved in weapons manufacturing or tobacco manufacturing, those are actually disqualified as investments which can access, impact funds. The other approach used in the sustainable investments is ESG. So ESG moves further than SRI from being defensive screening, but also analyzes companies' ESGs versus traditional financial measures. ESG further identifies companies' ESG risks and opportunities. And lastly, the approach we are going to look at, and which is also going to form a bulk of what we are going to discuss, is impact investing. So impact investors particularly are interested in impact sectors, for instance, improved access to clean water and also gender equality as examples. Impact investors also channel investment allocations in those particular issues to maximize both financial and social impact. And further, impact investors, they employ impact assessments and measurement methodologies. In addition to that, they are able to advance impact funds to eligible project developers, and they can also offer technical assistance. Next slide, please. Now, I also want to share with you the definition of impact investing from the Global Impact Investing Network. So according to GIIN, it says impact investments are investments made in companies, organizations, and funds with the intention of generating measurable social and environmental impact in addition to financial return. Impact investment occurs across asset classes and financial products, including private equity, venture capital, as well as debt. So as you may be aware, most companies, they just look at financial returns. But when you're looking at impact investing, it goes further. It looks at the impact coming from social and environmental in addition to the financial return. Next slide, please. Now, when we're looking at the impact investing, there is a criteria. Maybe if you can forget what impact investing is all about, you can just keep the impact investing criteria. So the three criteria are profitability, intentionality, and impact measurement. So on profitability, we look at impact investments which have financial return. So the expectation is that the investors are looking for financial returns. But then we have to be mindful that different investors have different levels of financial returns. On the intentionality, the goal here is to address a social and environmental change, and also supports businesses that can tackle social challenges such as poverty, water, sanitation, primary education, and health. Now, on the impact measurement, apart from the standard financial reporting, which most of us know, the investors commit to measure and report against social, environmental impact objectives. So this contributes to accountability of investment strategies. Next slide, please. When you're looking at impact investment, there is also a process flow which we need to look at. At the beginning there, we have impact investors. The capital and the business supports flows from impact investors to investees. So the impact investors are the ones who are going to supply the capital, while the investees could be the project developers, like in this case, the startups and other companies. So these impact investors can include various impact ventures. On the investees' role is to serve local beneficiaries by offering a product or service which can improve their quality of life, thus ensuring both financial and social or environmental returns. Next slide, please. This slide is showing us the typical actors in impact investing concepts. I know the slide may not be very clear, but you may look at it again maybe in your own time. But basically it's showing impact investors. So in this case, you can have maybe two groups like asset owners and asset managers. On the asset owners, you can have, let's say, high net worth individuals, philanthropies. And then on the asset managers, you have investment advisors, managers, and impact investment funds, venture capital funds. On the investees, then you have early stage entrepreneurs, SMEs, corporations, and so on and so forth. But also in impact investing, the enabling environment is very key. So you need enabling environment actors like professional networks, foundations, consulting firms, accelerators, and incubators. So all these are part of the enabling environment actors. Next slide, please. From there, we want to look at impact investing landscape in Africa. I have decided to narrow that to sub-Saharan Africa, not Africa in general. So next slide, please. So just as an overview for the sub-Saharan Africa, the African-led impact investing, according to World Bank statistics as at April 2023, it shows that sub-Saharan Africa is home to more than 1 billion people, half of whom will be under 25 years old by 2050. Sub-Saharan Africa, or just Africa in general, is a diverse continent offering human and natural resources that have the potential to yield inclusive growth and eradicate poverty in the region. With the world's largest free trade area and 1.2 billion personal market, the continent is creating an entirely new development path, harnessing the potential of its resources and people. So Africa comprises lower middle, upper middle, and high income countries, 22 of which are fragile and in conflict affected areas, while 13 have small population, limited human capital, and a confined land area. On the economic growth front, we've noted since the advent of COVID-19, there's been slow growth of 3.6% in 2022, and then 4.1% in 2021, 3.1% in 2023. So the growth is estimated to peak to 3.7% and 3.9% in 2024 and 2025 respectively. The slow recovery of per capita income growth at 1.2%, and next year at and in 2025 at 1.4, they still fall short of the accelerating poverty reduction in the region's pre-pandemic path. Next slide, please. As such, as you can see, I think it should be the impact for Africa. I think you need to go back. Yes. So, as we have seen from the figures, the trajectory for African development currently faces a substantial challenge, and the challenge is sustaining the impressive economic growth rates already witnessed in several countries, while adequately contending with deep challenges to social and environmental development. So some of these challenges include extreme poverty, which are perpetuated, for instance, by prevalent food insecurity, high rates of youth unemployment, and underdeveloped provisions of basic services to large proportions of the population. For instance, health, education, energy, and sanitary services. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now I want to look at the impact capital in Africa. The impact capital, which startups, project developers can access. So harnessing the potential of natural resources provides an opportunity to improve the physical and debt sustainability of African countries. Tapping into energy resources can improve energy access. We know that Africa faces a significant challenge to meet its universal high-quality energy access goals. In 2022, 600 million people in Africa, translating into 43% of the continent, lacked access to electricity. However, Africa's resource base and associated investments could help accelerate progress by developing diverse energy sources. Now, what is the challenge or the opportunity? When you look at one angle, it's a challenge, but when you look at it from a different angle, it's an opportunity. Because of many natural resources, projects are located in remote and rural communities. The scale-up of green energy investments and regional infrastructure could be leveraged to alleviate rural poverty and promote productive gains. I'm saying this because most rural areas cannot be on a national grid. That's why green energy, which uses, for instance, solar and other sources of energy, can be an opportunity for most projects. Next slide, please. Okay, so most African impact ventures aim to improve the quality of lives in Africa through increased access to basic services or through addressing overarching challenges such as job creation, income inequality, youth unemployment, or climate change. To review the potential demand for impact investing in Africa, we will first consider key development challenges that can be partially addressed through market-based mechanisms. So we can separate these challenges into four main themes. The first one being access to basic products and services. In other words, access to healthcare, financial, or education services. The second one is infrastructure development, such as water, housing, or energy systems. The third one is social development, including job creation, entrepreneurship, or gender equality. And the last one is environmental challenges, such as climate change adaptation or environmental degradation. It is noteworthy that many of the challenges above and their solutions are inherently interlinked and also interdependent. Next slide, please. So, as we have been discussing, the word impact has been common in all the slides which we've been looking at. What impact are we looking at here? So there is a social impact, which is the improvements in people's quality of life through improved access to infrastructure or basic services, such as energy, healthcare, education, housing, and clean water. In addition, social impact objectives tackle human development challenges, including entrepreneurship development, global food security, gender equality, job creation, youth unemployment, and more. The other angle of impact is environmental impact, which is generally understood as initiatives that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, address climate change challenges, or increase environmental sustainability, such as reforestation, conservation, and so on. So there are vast environmental and climate finance opportunities under sustainable development goals, which include environmental and sustainable development. So when we are looking at African impact investing, social impact targets are broadened to include economic inclusion, entrepreneurship development, and increased access to basic products and services. Next slide, please. Now we want to look at the characteristics of impact investors in Africa. So we have, for instance, dedicated early stage impact funds, and then the typical financial products include equity, debt, quasi-equity, grants, and then the typical sector focus in Africa. What do they focus on? Access to basic services, food, health, education, water, and so on and so forth. And then at the end there, we have examples of the investors there, like Acumen Fund, Tony Romeo Foundation, and the like. So I'll not go into detail on all of them, but I think in your spare time, you can look at them. We have private equity funds, development finance institutions. So we'll be looking at their typical financial products. You identify the sectors in which they are in, and then the examples of the investors you can partner with. Next slide, please. So this is just the continuation of the previous slide. We have foundations and institutional investors. So as startups, you need to identify, the typical financial products which these organizations offer, the sectors in which they finance, they support, and then the specific examples of the organizations. Next slide, please. Now, for SMEs or startups, what could be the takeaways from the information we've just discussed? Next slide, please. As a startup or as an SME, normally many startups may want to start a business just because they've seen maybe a colleague who has started the business without doing a proper research. So first of all, as a startup, we need to identify the source of problems or challenges which the world is facing, because inside the challenges, the problems, there are opportunities which you can harness. So for instance, from the different countries we are coming from, we can look at national or regional priorities, policies. These national regional priorities are going to spell out, these problems, these challenges. We can also look at institutional priorities. What are the institutional priorities for different countries? And then we can also look at research reports, including grey literature. In the research reports, you can have business opportunities and challenges which you can embark on. Something which has already been researched on is better than just picking up something you are not sure about whether it will work out or not. And then stakeholder consultations. There are so many stakeholder consultations in different countries, whether at country level, regional level, or even global. In those consultations, these problems are discussed. Again, press concerns and even personal observations can also provide insights as to what are the source of the problems and the challenges. Next slide, please. We are going to look at a simple problem analysis. As a startup, when you are looking at problems, what stages do you need to go through? So this is not like cast in stone. You may even have to explore other ways of problem analysis, but this is just an example of them. So step one, you identify the major problem existing within the stated problem situation, maybe in a certain sector. And then you write a short statement of the core problem, you as a project owner, as a startup, and then write the causes of the core problem. Why are these problems coming? And then the next step is to define which lower level problems may have contributed to each of the identified causes. And then you continue with the process. It's like a reiterative process. You continue to define lower level causes until further refinement is no longer useful. Then at the end, you review the diagram as a whole and verify its validity and completeness. The next slide, please. We're going to look at the problem tree, an example of a problem tree. So, an example of problem tree analysis, we're going to give specific examples. At the down there, you see root causes. So the root causes could be limited options for livelihood to grow household economy beyond agriculture and reliable electricity. And let me also mention that this problem tree analysis is based on my country, Malawi. So we were also looking at Malawi's overdependence on charcoal and fuel wood, and then underdeveloped alternative energy sources to fuel wood. So these are like root causes. And what problems are these root causes bringing? You see that there is unsustainable cutting down of trees, like in the rural areas, for charcoal production, leading to deforestation. So you see, the problem of which is under the root causes is also causing a further problem, which is deforestation. So the problem could not be deforestation. The problem could be maybe unreliable electricity or unavailable electricity in the rural areas. And then when you look at this problem, you see that there are impacts. So these are negative impacts: livelihood vulnerability, land degradation as a result of soil erosion, change landscape, loss of carbon sinks leading to climate change, loss of biodiversity. In other words, trees, fruits, birds, forests, cover, and animals, their habitats are also changed. So this is how, just an example of how you can come up with your own problem tree analysis. This is just one sector. You can go into different sectors and also do likewise. Next slide, please. So how can SMEs harness impact capital? So SMEs can access impact capital by improving their business performance, demonstrating their social and environmental impact, and finding suitable sources of funding. SMEs can also improve their performance by adopting best practices, strengthening their capabilities, and leveraging digital technologies. SMEs or startups can also demonstrate their impact by measuring and reporting on their contribution to the Sustainable Development Goals, such as job creation, poverty reduction, and climate action. As we've already seen in the previous slides, there are a lot of funds which support Sustainable Development Goals. We just have to come up with a proper business proposal which tackles, the challenges which we've discussed so far. SMEs can also find suitable sources of funding by exploring different options such as bank loans, equity finance, crowdfunding, and the development finance institutions. Next slide, please. Now, I want us to look at some specific examples of impact capital. I know we've already talked about them. Private equity venture capital, these are funds that invest in private companies that have the potential to scale and create impact. For example, Acumen is a fund that invests in companies that address poverty and social issues in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Another example of impact capital is debt. So these are loans or bonds that provide capital to borrowers who have a social or environmental mission. For example, Root Capital is a lender that provides financing to smallholder farmers and agricultural businesses in developing countries. The other type of impact capital is fixed income. So these are securities that pay a fixed interest rate and have a social or environmental purpose. For example, green bonds are bonds that finance projects that benefit the environment, such as renewable energy or climate adaptation. And then for the purposes of this presentation, the last one which we're looking at is crowdfunding. So these are platforms that allow individuals or groups to raise money from public for a specific cause or project. For example, Kiva is a platform that enables people to lend money to entrepreneurs in developing countries who need capital to start or grow their business. Next slide, please. So my passion as a consultant is off-grid energy. So I decided to share with you the off-grid energy resources, which at your own time you can explore and see what opportunities you can harness there. Next slide, please. Okay, so you have a lot of resources from the UN website which talk about sustainable development goals, especially goal number 7. And then the website is there. You have Global Commission to End Energy Poverty, and then we have World Bank, Lighting, Global Lighting Africa, Renewable Energy Comprehensive Resources. You can have research papers on Energypedia there, which can help you identify your area you want to focus on. And then we have Peak Platform for Energy Access Knowledge. Then we have research organizations, National Renewable Energy Lab, and then Strathclyde University. You also have search engines which look at comparing national policies, because that's where you identify challenges, the national policies, and also solutions to those challenges. Then you have Energy Finance Strategies, Progress and Research. Those are the websites. Sustainable Energy for All. Then you have Distributed Electricity, Mini Grids, and that's the organization, AMDA. And then you have crossboundary.com. Next slide, please. And then we have Mini Grids Partnership, Energy for Impact, Productive Use of Energy Advocates, Models, and Experiments. So basically, these are the resources which you may find useful on how maybe you can improve your startup, because most of the times startups may have a bright idea, but then putting up all the requirements which the impact investors need can be a challenge. So you can borrow a leaf from these areas and also from some of the topics we've discussed in this presentation to help you to come up with an investor-ready business proposal. I think that's the end of my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Violet. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom that you have shared so far. Particularly, I like the way you first came from the angle of letting us see an overview of what impact investment is, because if you understand the landscape, then you will know how to access the right kind of financing. And I also like, you brought in the consulting side of you by showing us, that the tree, the analysis and all that, so which is very good, because if you're able to analyze the problem you're solving properly, it will help you in communicating it, and then that will help you attract the right kind of investor, which is very important. And of course, finally, we have a similar passion for energy, and I like the way you dashed us and you blessed us with a lot of resources that are useful for entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs in the off-grid energy space. So I would like to say thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate your time. Right, so Miriam, you can go ahead. Thank you very much, Miriam.
My pleasure.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that beautiful presentation, ma. We really appreciate that, because you have helped us to shed more light on what impact investments is all about, as per taking us through the challenges we can face as startups, and also how we can get funds, like get capital on any sector in which we want to focus on. Okay, that's a beautiful presentation. Thank you very much for your time, ma. All right, up to Dr. Trevor Ambai. I think so. Okay, sorry. Dr. Trevor Ambai is a senior managing partner at Development Finance Associates, which is a social enterprise fund management company that supports social investments in startups covering grants, debt finance, and equity investment. He is currently consulting for international aid organization and the World Bank on matters relating to SME finance and that include investment fund sources for business enterprises, financial models, economic stimulus, bond insurance, and private sector interventions of economic growth. He has extensive global private sector and quasi-government organizations, which in UN in a conflict zone, investment analysis with a US-based financial institution, and consultancies with aid organizations and industry-specific associations in Zambia. Trevor experience as a financial analyst helps him to create both the local and international partnership in implementing innovative financing models that support SME development in poverty eradication that are social and commercially viable. As the topic says, unleashing um, the power of sustainable investment. We have choose for you good speakers that can shed more light for you. So, may I call on Dr. Trevor Ambari to please take the ground.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to speak to you. Let me just share my screen so that I can put my presentation up. Okay. Please confirm that the screen is visible now.
It's visible, but not in full screen mode yet.
All right. Digital challenges. Okay, there we are.
Yes.
So, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak to every one of you, and thank you for attending. This is obviously a topic that I'm very passionate about around having to be able to speak around SME access to finance. So my presentation outline basically is I have got very few slides. I think Violet has done a very, very good job of having to outline all the matters that are speaking to this. But I will try and give you a high-level overview of the specifics that she has mentioned, and I've got very few slides to be able to speak to this. But firstly, in terms of a thought process, I think it is very important for us to be able to think slightly differently in terms of while we're approaching the issue of sustainable impact investment. Firstly, as an African continent, we must appreciate what is the biggest challenge that the African continent is carrying. And the biggest challenge that we do carry, I think we'll all agree, is an issue of poverty. Is that the African continent has been dealing with the issue of poverty. And if you're looking at metric for poverty, which is now people that are living below the bottom line of $2.10, is that Africa holds the highest number of people that are living in that bracket. The rest of the world has been reducing the poverty levels, but the African continent's rate at which it's reducing poverty level has not matched the global space. By 2030, we expect that there will just be slightly over 400 million people living in extreme poverty across the globe. But 90% of those people will be in Africa. And that is a challenge. Now, if you look at, you understand the perspectives around the African continent, is that the African continent, firstly, holds some of the highest natural resources there is on the global space. They also have the fastest growing population in the world. And these all are speaking to resources that can be utilized to be able to advance the growth of the continent. But we seem to have failed to do this. The second thing that comes when we are looking at the issues around impact investment, you will find that all the criteria that we use to be able to determine who qualifies for financing, this criteria is Western, and it does not exactly speak to the specific needs of the continent. And you find that a lot of SMEs are unable to access these funds because of that criteria. I just wanted to have that background while we're working on this. So, but I would like to start with a quote. And it says, poverty is a very complicated issue, but feeding a child isn't. And it really speaks to every one of us in having to be able to create an impact on the global space that, yes, we're dealing with a very big issue of poverty. When you talk of poverty, all the other issues come in around nutritional status, around sanitation, health, education, around access to sustainable incomes. But the basic issue just starts with us having to be able to look after a child, to ensure that the child can grow up in an environment where they have what is required for them to develop. And this is the first issue that I always would like to start with. But I think this is a very good quote for me from Jeff Bridges. I will also basically mention the issue around what is a social enterprise. Now, there are a lot of different ways that everybody has seen what a social enterprise is, but the basic principle is it's a business catering to social causes for its commercial profits. The very important aspect you need to appreciate here is that you cannot provide a social service if you do not have the revenue to sustain this, because a social service is required indefinitely and you need a form of income to support this. And then it has to come from commercial profits. What makes the difference is that for you to be able to do this, there are those that want to be able to provide the social service from the profits that they have generated, amassed wealth, and there's something left over for them to give away, which is what the world's billionaires are doing. But there are also entities that just generate sufficient money to be able to maintain their operations and then support the social causes. So this really defines the different entities. But the bottom line is whatever social enterprise you are, is that you must generate sufficient profits to be able to talk about having to provide a social service. Now, once you're doing this, once you're able to get a social enterprise that is running, is that it means that you must be able to put your investment that must be sustainable, because you can only provide the social services from the sustainable income that you're generating from investment. And you can see there that my big square is talking about profit. This is the most important aspect. Irrespective of how you want to be able to do this, there must be profit that is generated. You have heard in terms of impact investment, I think Violet mentioned there's another phrase that is used, which is the 3P. And the 3P is what you do see here, which is profit, people, and planet. It is basically speaking to impact investment, that you must generate a certain degree of profit. This must be speaking to be able to provide the social support to people, whether you're creating employment, whether you're increasing their livelihood, or you're providing with health services or improving their sanitation. And then we're looking at the planet, which are the environmental issues that you are speaking to this. The carbon emissions, which is the first one. You know what this has been doing around climate change. And then there's obviously the soil degradation in terms of the chemicals that we're putting in there to try and get crops out of it. We now have been talking about conservation agriculture. We'll be talking about also the issue around generating power, that we want to be able to do green energy. which does not degrade our lakes and rivers in creating dams. All these things is basically impact investment. The red one that you see on top is, I think, the one that she mentioned, Violet mentioned, which is an ESG, is also speaking to impact investment. And when they do use this, obviously they're talking about the same thing, which is the environment, the social issues around having to support people, and then the governance. Now, one of the things that I have always mentioned, which is very, very interesting, is that when you look at the African continent in terms of its capacity to be able to drive economic emancipation, for us to be independent of, to get beyond this issue around poverty, one of the key factors that is an issue is governance. And this governance is speaking to the political space that we seem to have leaders that have got no interest in wanting to ensure that we can drive sustainable growth. They all look at the short term, and this is their personal gains. But that is a discussion for another one. But I always indicate that the governance issue around this is also a very important aspect for the continent to be able to walk out of or get out of the issues of poverty, because we need the governance structure that is structured right to be able to change the paradigm with the general populace. So these are the two issues that I do. So in terms of sustainable investment, is that whatever you're doing is that you must generate a profit. And in terms of impact, other than the fact that you must have the right number of people that you are supporting in terms of your business for it to be profitable, is that it must speak to the 3 Ps, which is your profit, planet, and people. Now, there are different types of social enterprises that you do have, but I've classified them into 4. The first one is the commercial. This is that you see all the multinationals, is that they do always generate very, very high profits. They drive a position of very high profits. And you've seen this. This is what Microsoft is doing, where they've generated sufficient profits. They can take a lot of those resources and put them into a foundation to do what they call, obviously, CSR, corporate social responsibility. And then I also consider this a very interesting one, where I think individuals is a very high component of social enterprises. And you see this in the fact that a lot of individuals will support, you will support relatives, you will support friends, you will support colleagues, you will support family in providing them with a social need, whether it is housing, whether it is food, whether it is support around sanitation. But a very big component on the African continent is that social services are provided by individuals. The ones that are working will support relatives who are not working, and this is also a form of a social enterprise. And I think is a very, very strong one for the African continent. But also when you do think about it as an entrepreneur, is that you will find the opportunity to create a business strategy there. Then there are obviously the social enterprises that are specifically designed to be able to support social investment, and they're not looking for a very high return, but they still want a return. But their key focus area is obviously the other 2 issues, which is people and planet. But there are also enterprises. And then the non-governmental organizations that do not generally generate any resources. They are dependent on having to be financed by external parties that believe in their cause. And it starts with, I'll mention the different types of funding sources that they'll be able to do. But that non-governmental organizations are really big that are trying to be able to deal with these challenges. But it is so important, I have always said, for non-governmental organizations to start to think about how they can start to be sustainable in having to support this, because the issue of where they're actually having to be able to depend on grants from third parties is not sustainable. And at some point they find that their capacity to be able to provide these services is limited. But also, other than the capacity being limited, is that they are also having to be inclined to be able to implement projects that are aligned to who has funded them. And sometimes they do not speak in the best interest of what we want to do. Okay. Now, in terms of you having to be able to look for funding, to be able to raise funding for your social enterprise, firstly is that you must appreciate the funds that support a social enterprise should be profits that are generated from running your business. And you take a component of this to be able to speak to social funding organization, or you want to be able to accelerate how much funds you do have to be able to do this. The first thing, obviously, that you must be looking at is that you must have a concept note, which is in business, your business plan, your project brief, your executive summary. That is speaking to what your project is. And this concept note will basically outline where you're going, who you're going to support, what impact is going to create, how much funding you need, how many people it is actually going to support. So this must be strengthened. And then you're obviously speaking about to your capacity as to how well you are equipped to be able to deliver these services. So that concept note is the biggest issue that you must have in place before you start having to think about having to look for funding. The second thing is obviously your due diligence, is that as an enterprise, you need to be able to do your due diligence to determine which organization will provide you the funding that best suits your needs, because every organization has got a specific focus area as to where they want to be able to take their funds. It even starts with geographic location. They'll start with the geographic location, they'll be looking at it. Then they'll be looking at an issue about the specific industry in which they want to be able to do it, whether they are looking at green climate issues, or whether they are looking at issues around conservation agriculture, or they are looking at issues of social funding where they're actually creating employment, or they are looking at nutritional status of having to improve. So they're very specific about where they want to do. And this is important for you to be able to determine which organizations are in your sector that will be aligned to projects that you want to be able to implement as a social enterprise. But the biggest issue that you do have all around this is your resilience as an entrepreneur that is going to be making a difference as to whether you can get the funds. It doesn't matter how many funding sources Violet and me point you to. The only key issue that is going to make a difference as to whether you will actually get those funds is yourself. And that is the biggest financial resource that you do have, which is yourself. What you do as a project promoter is what is going to make the difference as to whether the funding is going to come through. Now, the funding options that you'll be looking at are basically very different depending on how you want to be able to do it. So for government, you're looking at the public funding sector. So the government has got different areas in which they're able to do it. They can do this through government ministries, which will basically are specific, whether they are looking at the Ministry of Social Services, will be providing some services there, or they're providing subsidies in the Ministry of Agriculture, or those is speaking to social spending. But the government is then their public entities that are able to deliver this. Then there are grants, and the grants come from foundations. So there are usual foundations that are established by high net worth individuals who then create these funds and put them into, or there is an inheritance that has been put in a fund as a trust to be able to support this. And you see these around. So there's the Melinda Gates Foundation, which provides funds like that. You also find a couple of foundations that have been established by former United States presidents. All those ones support social enterprise. There are some that have been established as well. I know that there's one in South Africa. So there are also local ones. Tommy Elune has also got a foundation that supports SMEs. He's Nigerian. So these are also foundations that provide grants. Then there's concessional funding. These concessional funds usually come as impact funds, and these are established either by multinationals or they're established by foundations, and it's a large sum of money, but these are impact funds, and usually is that it's debt finance, but it's concessional, which is low interest rate. There are some that actually have no interest rate, like what comes from angel investors, where they want you to take the money, invest it into the projects, and then just return the same amount of money that we gave you, as long as you are able to achieve the key metrics that we have agreed on in terms of impact. So on the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit. And then there's obviously the commercial ones. These are for large organizations, and they take a portion of their profits and they put it away to support impact investing. And this is obviously your CSR, which is your corporate social responsibility. There's another one that I have created, which is again an individual. So there's one that I call ISR, and the ISR is your individual social responsibility. I figure this is a stronger component that if we are able to commercialize the ASR in terms of the support that we're doing, and is focused, it looks at the domestic support that we give in supporting social enterprise, and obviously the philanthropy, that is free money that we give, but in small amounts, because it's an individual, is a very important funding option that you must look at. So really, these are the 5 funding options that I have looked at that you can be able to look at, depending on what financing instrument you want to look at. All these ones will be a different one, whether it's a grant, whether it's debt, whether it's an equity investment, or whether it's a social investment. The financing instruments are all very different, but I think these are the 5 that I have outlined. Now, the financing sources in terms of social funds is that you heard a lot of them. Sorry, I didn't actually break this down to actually give you the actual examples, but it's just good, important for you to be able to know this, is that you've got the green funds. Sorry, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the biggest ones is on the climate change, is that the UN has got what they call the COP, which is the climate fund. Is quite a big one, which is around 3.2 billion. But these funds are all speaking to supporting this. Now, the interesting thing that you do very specific in terms of poverty. What has been happening is that the West has always come up with a different approach to having to do with these things. You know that prior to this, we had the MDGs, Millennium Development Goals. Now we are on the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. But we've also changed the narrative that we're calling it climate change funds. We're calling it green energy funds. We're calling it green bonds. The challenges that the African continent have faced are still the same. We need to be able to adapt to our approach to having to resolve the challenges that we do have using strategies that are speaking to us. All these criteria they have given is very, very difficult for us to be able to adapt. But we seem to be changing all our narratives so that we can meet the narrative that allows us to be able to access those funds. And I think that is a challenge. More importantly, on the local front, as African countries, it's very important for us to be able to maximize the pension funds. Is that the pension funds have got large resources that we can tap into to be able to deal with the challenges that we do have, as long as we can create the governance structures that are important to be able to ensure that these are sustainable and the resources are not wasted. And then we can obviously be able to change the narrative around cooperating partners, which is the funds that are external that come to us, without us having to bend all our regulations to meet the cooperating partners' specific issue. And again, I mentioned my ASR, which is your individual social responsibility. I think I've already addressed this. So as in my closing, as a take, there are a couple of 3 things that I think are important that you must have in terms of having to understand the issues around impact investment. So the first one is that however you want to approach your social responsibility as an enterprise, it must create the impact so that the resources that you are putting in there actually are able to support a large number of people. I think you might have heard this, that it says that for the African continent's issue of poverty is that what we're trying to do is to lift a large number of people out of poverty. And to be able to do this, we need to have sustained economic growth. We cannot have sustained economic growth without a vibrant private SME sector. So in terms of having to be able to do this, because the African number of people that are living in poverty is so high, over 400 million, we need to have strategies that are impacting a large number of people at the same time to be able to lift them out of poverty for this impact to be created. And I think that is what impact investment is that it's speaking to touching many lives at the same time. Second one is viability, is whatever strategy we are able to use to be able to do this, it must be viable. And this is where you as an entrepreneur, as an SME comes in creating a business strategy that is going to be viable. In its viability, the potential for you to be able to attain or amass wealth is in you having to have a large number of people actually utilizing your product, which is the social challenge that you are sorting, is speaking to a lot of people. That also creates the value for you as a business enterprise. And the last one is obviously that it must create profit. Once it creates profit, this then speaks to everybody's benefit, that it will speak to having to be able to have created value for our planet in terms of environmental conservation. It will have spoken to the issue of creating profit, which is what brings value for you. And then the last one is that it will actually be speaking to having touched a large number of people's lives, which is people. And you'd have changed a lot of people's lives. And that is the three takeaways that I do have.
Helen?
So thank you very much for listening to me. I think that covers my presentation.
Wow, thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough, Trevor. Having just recently met via the Jack Ma Foundation African Business Heroes, where we're judges, it just delights me that you all, especially after we had postponed the event, once, still able to make it. So thank you so much for joining and giving such an insightful presentation. The very first quote that you made, that you said, poverty is very complicated. It's a complicated issue, but feeding a child isn't. And when we talk about impact, when we talk about social enterprise, everything, especially when we're focusing on Africa, is edged on this sense of poverty. Access to electricity, to do with poverty, infrastructure, education, everything that ties social enterprise. That quote by Jeff Bezos is very powerful, and thank you so much for that. Another thing I found very important in your presentation was the fact that social enterprises should not forget the fact that you don't have to be a not-for-profit, you shouldn't have to be an NGO, but commercial profit is so key, so critical for your sustainability. You need to be able to continue your business in a way that you generate profit for yourself. That's why the fact that you're solving problems and you are having impact. So that is also very profit is very good. The planet and profit. And then finally, I like the point where you noted there has to be a strong alignment, between what investors are looking for and what your project is or what your business is. So that alignment, you need to understand what the investors are funding, maybe the kind of business or the kind of sector they are interested in, or even the stage that they are interested in. So the wisdom that you have shared today has been very valuable, and I'd like to thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure having to be.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. All right. All right. Up next is our host. She has been speaking for a while now, and here is her profile. Mrs. Olawumi Olatuji, the CEO of Brookville Investments Limited, specializing in energy and natural resources, project finance, and development advisory. She has 15 years experience in banking, finance, petroleum economics, and asset management. She has overseen multi-million dollar projects across oil and gas, mining, and renewable energy industries. In her roles at Guaranty Trust Bank, First Bank of Nigeria PLC, and DJ Connect Nigeria. In 2018, she co-founded Outlier Venture Lab, a climate-focused venture development program facilitating investment readiness. She also served as the Nigeria Country Coordinator for PFAN, UNIDO, REEP's Global Network Accelerating Climate and Energy Investments. Olawumi holds a degree in petroleum geoscience and economics with and is a charter holder, at the Chartered Global Investment Analysts Network (CGIA). She is a certified financial modeling and valuation analyst from the Corporate Finance Institute, Vancouver. Furthermore, Olawumi actively contributes to the board of Solve Education, an edtech startup based in Nigeria and Singapore. All right, may I please have, can you please share your screen to have your
Thank you
presentation, ma'am?
reading my profile. If you stop sharing your screen and I can share.
Okay.
So I'm not doing so much of a presentation in social unsurprising, but more like I just want to touch on something that cuts across whatever sector or whatever industry one is presenting on, or what business it is. It's basically talking about communicating your investment pitch, right? And I had this slide, before, but it's very valuable for this talk. So I'm going to just quickly run through it, right? So, and it's going to be, it's not very deep, but basically just like an overview that will help you just understand how you need to pitch. Perhaps you are pitching for a competition, or some potential investors. So this is going to be very valuable for that, right? First fact here is that, and I think all of us here, if you've had any sort of experience trying to seek investment for your business, for your project, for your startup at any point in time, we know that it's hard work. It's a lot of hard work because it takes a lot of toll on you in terms of time commitment, in terms of documentation that you would have to put together to achieve your purpose. So it's a lot of hard work, and it requires us to get down to the grind. The next here is that so this is an outline. I'm basically just talking about a couple of things. I may not go through everything, but I just want to focus on the portion that talks about financing, that talks about pitching rather particularly, right? So I'll skip this. So the first thing I like to talk about here is that the capital you receive, the capital that you raise, right, is totally dependent on the kind of business you have or what you have in your business. And what that says is that it depends on whether firstly, you even have to think of what you're trying to achieve in terms of for your business. So what kind of business are you trying to put together? We are here talking about social enterprises, and we know that it's totally different from if you have a fintech business, because in terms of scalability, tech driven and all that, these are the kind of things that you have to think of. So it's very important to know that what happens in your business in terms of the value that you've put together, the assets, the team, the people that work in that organization, is very key for you to know that you are valuable in terms of putting and trying to present that in a compelling manner to your investors. So next year, I just said what attracts funding. So we talked about scalability, scalable business. Whether you're a social enterprise or not, your project, your business must be highly scalable. One of the spotlights that we have in the presentation is a recycling startup, and the way it's called Vic Fold Recycler. So it's one of the entrepreneurs or the startups that we've worked with on Outlier Venture Lab. And the way Victor has been able to scale his business is to tie technology to that recycling business that it does. And what it does is having a platform where you can log and connect the community where it's located in, I think it's in the southern part of Nigeria, right? With that technology, is able to connect different categories of women and youth and help in the collection of plastic and the recycling of plastic. So that platform helps him a lot, and that's something that will help in scalability. So you have to think about how you make what you're doing and you make your work also very good. Then I mentioned earlier about experienced management teams. How experienced is the management and who are they? Why should they matter? The market you're also focusing on, is it a growing market? This is very important, because when we're talking about the fact that we're social enterprises, but we want to have profitability, we want to have commerciality, the market has to be attractive to investors. Then also, do you have some technology? Is it defensible? I've seen entrepreneurs that work in this clean cooking space, for instance, and they've come up with very fantastic technology to help develop clean cooking solutions. So what can you tie to that will make it proprietary and defensible? So for instance, are you going to put some software that will help people know when the gas that that they generate, maybe when the level of the gas is depleting or something? That can be a kind of technology that you can defend or something. So that's very good. Of course, profitability in terms of your business model is important, and the business plan, if it's very interesting, attracts the attention of the speaker, so the investors or the audience. So that's the concept notes, your business plan or your proposal. Very, very important. So the next is to talk about what you need, the money that you need. How would you spend it, and what will that do for your business? So you have to be very clear on the funding need in terms of the ask, the investment ask, the funding need has to be clear. It has to be based on defendable assumptions. So how did you come up with that $2.5 million that your project needs? It has to be based on market value, based on defendable assumption. And then how would that be deployed? And then more importantly, what would it do for, so for saying something like it will take our business from a particular level to say we are currently reaching 100 women, or maybe for instance, we are a health startup, for instance, and you say with this investment, we are going to design this technology that will take us to reaching maybe 2,000. That is, it's tangible and it can be measured. So it's very important for you to be clear about that. Right, okay, so I'm going to skip this because we've talked a lot about this. Now I'm going to go straight to the pitch. So what you want to present, who is the audience, and when to present it. So so we have two types of pitches. I usually encourage my entrepreneurs and the people we work with to have two types. The 3-minute pitch, of course, there's also the 1-minute pitch where you can just say who you are and all that. And then there's the 10-minute pitch. So basically here, the 3-minute, which is like 90 seconds, and just basically says, our company name is XYZ, what we do, we have this, or we do what, or we solve what problem. And then who are our customers? You can say we currently have onboarded 200 or 500. Then your management strength, who are the people that are actually running this enterprise? For instance, our CEO is this person, is maybe is a school, where is school that is very important, or maybe the experience he has in exiting startups, or the experience he has in developing social enterprises, or the experience he or she has in maybe managing funds or something. Just whatever that would try to put the team in a very good light is very important to have in that 3-minute speech. And then, of course, exactly how much you're pitching. That is clear. So the second pitch is what, for instance, if you are in a competition where you have more time, maybe like a 10-minute presentation where you have been allotted a certain amount of time. Here you want more information and more detail, to make that kind of presentation. What excites me most is if you have a very compelling story that attracts people and helps them listen to you. So, and that is what I call the hook. I remember when I was working with some startups at African Entrepreneurship Award in Morocco, and what I would teach them to do is to find that story that touches the heart. And there was a particular entrepreneur that he wasn't very eloquent when you compare to the other people that had a lot of very maybe international degrees and all that. But after we had worked together, he was able to go down to his core to say, he was able to bring his background in terms of maybe the fact that he had gone through a lot of pain, poverty, and he's now trying to turn that pain around to develop this very big initiative. So tying that his personal story was a hook that helped him, win at that particular competition. So having that story that is compelling, that that can be a story that is emotional. It can be something that has to do with facts or something. So that hook is very important. It attracts attention. It grabs people instantly. And this is something that, is well done a lot in marketing and all that. And of course, you tie that hook directly to the problem that you're trying to solve. Then you bring in your solution. Then, of course, you know that for you to say you do not have competition, it's kind of naive. So you have to make sure you have enough research of what are other people doing in this space. And then after you've talked about that, there are 10 other companies doing this, but the reason why we're different is your competitive advantage. So that could be the technology, for instance, that you have brought in. It could be so like what they call the secret sauce. So you bring that in. It could be the experience that you have. It could be your perception of the problem that exists that your competitors have not seen in that, the way to solve it, they've not seen, but you have been able to see that. So you bring that competitive analysis. Then we want to talk about your route to market, how you want to access it. So the value chain that you want to work with. And how do you make money, which is the business model, monetization. Of course, social enterprise, it's obvious, your social impact is key in everything that you're doing, but you still have to capture it. Then financials, the KPIs, your revenue, your net growth margin, and all different indices of revenue that you need to show, or financial indices that you need to show. Then, of course, if you have history or traction, this is so important when we're reviewing applications and you have about 10. If I have 2 that have traction, it excites me because I know that these people have done this before, and what they're looking for is for us to empower them to get to a bigger level, and that's very exciting. So that's important to put in. And then what do you need? And it becomes the story. I need this amount of dollars to reach the next milestone, and that's the milestone. And then they ask. So basically, that's the 10-minute speech, and I just wanted to share this because I believe that it's useful in helping you define your pitch and the way you're going to communicate your investment to people. And this is very useful in even in when you're structuring your teaser, structuring your pitch deck, and do different documents like that. Right. So thank you for the opportunity to speak to you, and I would now hand over to Miriam, where she would just round up the meeting, because we're actually about past 12. So Miriam will just round up the meeting and share a couple of things with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ma. Thank you for the presentation and shedding more light on that part, which is very vital in fundraising process. Thank you very much, Ma. Okay, up next is I'll just shed more light, just the spotlight um, is upcoming um, our upcoming deal room. I will call on Mrs. Olawumi Olatunji to shed more light on this part. Please, ma'am.
I thought you were going to. Okay, since Shaib is not here, I'll just quickly run through this. So we have a deal room coming up, and we've planned that for November. And basically, investor deal is just a closed opportunity where you can pitch your investors to your investment or your project to our network of investors. We have been creating documents, teasers, and pitch decks. So basically, all you need to do is to be a part of this is to click on the link. There's a link provided. I think is I can't see the link here. So and basically all they need to do is just to be part of the deal room. If they have businesses that fall under agriculture, which is actually agro, mobility, and clean energy, manufacturing, construction. Also, we have health, which is also a social enterprise, and health. So if you have any social enterprise that falls in these categories, just click on the link that's provided in the box, and you can pitch your startups or your projects for this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma. Thank you very much, our speakers, Mrs. Violet. We are very happy to have you on board. Also, Dr. Trevor Ambai, thank you very much for sharing your time with us. Okay, also our attendees, we really appreciate your time and we hope you have learned one or two things from this insightful webinar. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, I think this is the end of the webinar, and we say thank you very much for this. And also, display here on the screen is our contact number, our address, the mail you can reach us out on, and also the numbers in which you can reach us to. Thank you very much.